Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good morning to all. And thank you for the invitation also from my behalf. And of course, it was quite shocking to hear the news from Brussels, but at the same time, it actually gives even more motivation and reason to work with multilateral cooperation and for sustainable development, which is essentially to prevent such terrible things to happen. But to this presentation, I will now take you out of the water box, let's put it that way, and look at the SDGs and the Agenda 2030 in a more comprehensive way, and give some insights on what are the plans here in Finland to implement the agenda. I'm eager to start the presentations by showing this picture because it has inspired our thinking, our sustainable development thinking here in Finland. You can see that on one hand we have the environmental ceiling and 9 planetary boundaries, and one of them being the freshwater use. And we need to safeguard these planetary boundaries. Some of them are already exceeded due to human action, and this is the case, for instance, with the climate change. And now we have the Paris Agreement, of course, where we try to repair the damage by implementing the commitments. But all in future, we need to ensure that human action happens within the limits of these boundaries. But then on the other hand, we have the social foundation, which we should not disregard either. The basic social needs, human rights, and societal opportunities, which you can see in the middle, need to be fulfilled in a sustainable society. And if we manage to tackle these mutually important aspects, we are likely to achieve the safe and just space for humanity, inclusive and sustainable economic development, and sustainable development. But of course, in Finland, we don't need to start from scratch. We have promoted sustainable development policies for over 20 years now. We have had various strategies from various decades, and we have managed by these strategies, we have managed to raise awareness, create ownership and commitment amongst different societal actors, and we have managed to interlink the global challenges into national realities. We have also had a strong multi-stakeholder institutional governance supporting sustainable policies in Finland. The National Commission on Sustainable Development has operated already for 23 years now, so it was established right after the original Rio conference in '92, and it has operated without interruption, so the government coalitions have come and gone, but the Commission has stayed, and the Prime Minister has been in the lead of the Commission almost all the time. The Commission started a new 4-year term this January, and here you can see the richness of stakeholders and societal actors taking part in this work. So besides all the ministries, members of the Parliament, public administration and self-governing bodies, there are 49 stakeholders and interest organizations, NGOs, whatever, represented in the Commission. And the Commission thereby gives quite a significant voice to broader society in sustainable issues in Finland. But now, of course, we are in front of a totally new and ambitious challenge. The Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs adopted last September in New York gives us all a new direction towards sustainable development. The universality is core, and it makes the agenda extremely important also to developed countries like Finland and other Nordic countries, and its transformative nature calls for ambitious and innovative solutions in implementing the agenda. And what is important is that sustainable development goals, they require interlinked responses. We have the 5 Ps in the Agenda 2030: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. They are the overarching themes that illustrate the broadness of the agenda. Sustainable development is essentially broader than the sum of its 3 dimensions. And then we have the 17 SDGs shown here in a quite an unorthodox way. But I sort of like this messy picture because we should see them as integrated whole, the SDGs, not as individual icons in some chronological order as they are normally presented. But this is the beauty and the pain of the new global agenda, at least from the national point of view, how to implement the integrated agenda. In Finland, we have already some insights from international benchmark studies on how Finland is positioned. We have the OECD stress test, which gives already some indication on the likely strengths and gaps of Finland in the implementation. And this graph shows the situation in Finland. I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see that overall we scored well in this benchmark. Our readiness to start implementing the goals and targets is 4th best among the OECD countries, right after Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. And then Iceland is also in the 9th position, so the Nordics are doing well as many times in these benchmark studies we are. The biggest gaps in this review are well known as well in Finland: primary energy intensity and domestic material consumption. If we look at the water SDG, goal number 6, by contrast, we position very well, at least with the used indicators, which are in this case freshwater withdrawals as % of total internal resources and population connected to wastewater treatment. So, we have already started to draft our national plan for implementing the Agenda 2030. We have the institutional setting and mechanisms actually in place. I will come to that in my next slide. We have also conducted a survey on ministries' measures and policies, legislation and implementation of international agreements to find out those policies and measures that contribute to the implementation of the Agenda 2030 in sectors. And this applies to national and EU legislation, sectoral or thematic strategies and action plans, as well as implementation of the international agreements and commitments. And what is very important for us in this work is this external gap analysis, which will guide the further preparation of the National Agenda 2030 implementation plan. And it will be conducted now from March until June. And the objective of the report, this gap analysis report, is to draw a baseline for Finland's implementation measures, and in particular to point out those goals and targets where Finland has most to catch up. And then in the spirit of the Agenda 2030, we are going to apply the participatory working method. So it's not only what and why Finland is going to implement, but also how, and we are going to engage the whole society, not only in the implementation of the agenda, but also in designing the national plan for the implementation. And one special focus and challenge for us is how to engage the Parliament in a way that we could engage all parties, not only the government parties, and that all parties and the whole of government, the whole of Parliament will be committed to implement the plan until 2030. And as some of you may know, Finland is one of the first volunteering countries to report on its plan plans and findings of the study in the United Nations High-Level Political Forum in July. So this is the institutional setting. I'm not going to explain this in detail. What is important is for you to know is that the Prime Minister's office is in charge of the coordination, and the coordination is taking place in close cooperation with all ministries. And as you can see at the bottom, we have two very broad-based multi-stakeholder committees, so the Finnish Development Policy Committee and the National Commission on Sustainable Development, and they can generate the impulses and inputs to the Prime Minister's office and to this government level coordination and preparation. And then our special tool, which Federico already mentioned in his presentation, is the society's commitment to sustainable development. I just tell a few words about it because it's quite a unique way to implement the implement sustainable development and Agenda 2030 in particular. So what it is, the idea is that we need a great societal transformation, so we cannot work in silos anymore. We need long-term visionary framework, so our commitment is until 2050. And there are 8 integrated objectives which are in line with the SDGs, and it is actually at the moment updated, these objectives in line with the SDGs. And what is unique is that it is not just a national strategy for sustainable development, but it is also a concrete instrument for all those actors and partners that want to implement the Agenda 2030 in Finland. So it gives a tool for anybody to join in. This is just in a nutshell how it works. We actually call it a social innovation because it works towards the societal engagement. All kinds of organizations or even individuals can participate by launching their own operational commitments. And the idea is simple. Anyone can commit to concrete action. We don't allow any business as usual. It needs to be new. It needs to be interlinked with the 8 objectives that we have. These actions need to be measurable, and it has to be followed up. And when the number of commitments increases, new partnerships, coalitions, and clusters will be born, and systemic changes are possible. This is what we need. And at the moment, we have a bit more than 230 operational commitments given, and more actually comes every week. And this is my last slide, and this is actually what it is all about, also here in Finland. So we cannot look at the other countries only when we talk about the implementation of the global goals. It is not enough that we ensure that development takes place somewhere out there, but we have to look at a mirror and ensure that our own development policies and measures are sustainable. And we have to lead by example, and Water Goal is actually an excellent opportunity to make the leadership happen. Thank you for your attention.